Harbor Point went quiet the second Sergeant Kyle Dunham walked up to my fruit cart, planted his hand on his holster, and said real slow so everybody could hear it, "Rents do produce, boy." Then reached into my cash tray like it was already his, and I'm telling you, you could feel the whole block freeze at once. Old ladies with grocery bags, kids with backpacks still halfway zipped, guys from the body shop on lunch break holding foil-wrapped sandwiches. Everybody stuck between looking and not looking, because in East Ridge you learn fast that looking at the wrong thing can get you dragged. He leaned in so close I could smell that drugstore cologne under his burnt coffee breath, and he said almost friendly, "Touch me, and you bleed in front of all your little customers, boy," like he was offering customer service, and I just stood there with my hands where he could see them while he scooped out my folded bills, my change stack, even the 5 I keep in the corner for people who are short and swear they'll pay me back Friday, and around us people did that nervous laugh that isn't really laughing, you know what I mean? That laugh that says, "I'm scared for you, but I'm also scared for me." Now I know that sounds like a nightmare, and yeah, it was, but before you say what everybody says, why didn't you swing on him, Marcus? Why didn't you knock him out right there in the street? Let me back you up, because there's something you need to know about me and about this cop and about this corner. My name is Marcus Reed. On paper that day I was just a fruit guy. I had the orange shirt I wore so often the collar went soft, the green windbreaker hanging off the cart handle, and a cheap vendor license with a name that technically wasn't mine. My regulars knew me as the man with the sweet mangoes and decent prices, the guy who remembers that Mr. Valdez wants bananas with a little green on them because he buys for the week, not the day, the guy who sets aside soft peaches for Miss Rhonda because her teeth are bad and she doesn't like to say that out loud. That's who I was to Harbor Point. But the truth is I was 19 years into the United States Marshal Service, deep undercover on a federal corruption case we had been building for close to 3 years. And the man stealing my money in front of the whole block was not just some loud, underpaid, bitter patrol cop with an attitude. He was the point man for an extortion ring sitting inside Precinct 12 East Ridge. And that day, every word coming out of his mouth was going straight into evidence. People think corruption looks like a movie deal gone wrong in some back office, and sometimes it does. But in neighborhoods like Harbor Point, it's way more basic, way more ugly, way more personal. It's a man in uniform walking up in daylight and making you understand that your right to keep what you earned is now a monthly bill you pay to him. The complaints that brought me there in the first place weren't, "This one officer was rude to me" type complaints. They were, "If you try to run a hot dog cart without paying Sergeant Dunham, your cart is gone by Friday, and you're in cuffs for some paperwork violation, and if you open your mouth, he knows where your kids wait after school." We're talking full-on street tax, safety fee, disrespect, fine, whatever he decided to call it that week. He'd do it like it was official business too, like he was just explaining city policy to you. And people paid not because they agreed, but because they had rent due and couldn't afford to get shut down. We couldn't just roll up on that slap cuffs and call it a case, because if you know anything about trial work, you know one angry vendor's word against one decorated sergeant dies in court before lunch, and the sergeant goes right back to work twice as mean. We needed pattern. We needed chain of command. We needed to prove money flow up the ladder, and yeah, there was a ladder because dirty money doesn't sit still, and if a sergeant is that loud, trust me, somebody with rank is letting him be that loud. So I went in, and going in is not what people think it is. Going in is not fake mustache, new passport accent from a place you've never been. Going in is repetition. You do it every day until it feels like you were always that person. You wake up at 5. You push that busted cart from your storage spot under the bridge before sunup so it looks like you don't own a car. You lay out fruit exactly the same way, so even people who aren't really looking start to feel like you're part of the scenery. You listen more than you talk. You learn rhythm. You blend. You become expected. I learned Harbor Point like that, like a beat. I knew Rosa, 73 years old, bad knee. She swears is fine. Runs a flower cart she's been dragging around for 10 years, whole family depending on that little cash stream. I knew her grandson Malik, skinny kid, too much pride for his age, walking her to her spot before school every morning, telling her he'll be late for first period, and her pretending she believes he'll actually go. I knew Miguel from the newspaper stand. I knew the food truck guys from Bayview Construction. I knew which lunch shift from the county courthouse walks through at 12:15, and who always tries to haggle me down and then says, "Come on, man, we're friends," like I'm supposed to feel guilty for wanting full price for strawberries that I woke up at 5 to buy. The first time I saw Dunham run his script, Rosa was the target. It was mid-morning, slow stretch sunlight bouncing off busted glass in the gutter, and he just walked up like he owned the block. leaned his elbow into her flower cart like he was settling in at a bar and said, "It's 70 this month, safety fee went up." He said it real casual, almost bored. Rosa straightened her back and said in this soft, respectful voice, "Sir, I pay the vendor permit, I pay the city like everybody else, I don't owe you. And I swear to you," he smiled slow, like a man posing for a picture nobody's taking, and then with that same lazy arm, he just swept half her flowers straight into the street. Tulips, carnations, all that work. She got up at 4 in the morning to do face down in Harbor Point gutter water. It made this sound I can still hear like little wet pops when the stems snapped. Rosa let out one of those quiet sounds that older folks make when they're past anger and somewhere near heartbreak, and she dropped to her knees to try to scoop them up before they were ruined. And he looked down at her and said louder now, "See how clumsy you got when you started talking slick? Now it's 90. And when I tell you the air changed, I mean it. Because we all know what we just watched. We didn't watch him write a ticket. We watched him hurt her business on purpose, and we watched him enjoy it." People ask me, and they always ask me this like it's an easy question. "Marcus, how did you not swing on him right there?" Let me answer that for the last time. It's not that I didn't want to. It's not that I didn't picture it. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, where we were raised on simple rules. You don't talk to elders like that, you don't touch their work, you don't call them out their name, and you definitely don't threaten their grandkids. I wanted to put him on the concrete so bad my molars hurt. But undercover work has one rule that sounds cold until you understand it. You don't get to break cover just because you're mad. You only break cover if it saves a life or locks the door on the kind of case that actually changes something. If I throw a punch that day, here's what happens. I go down for assaulting an officer. Rosa loses her cart entirely. Dunham becomes a victim on paper. The whole case evaporates. He comes back angrier. Nobody wins but him. So I did the thing that felt like swallowing glass. I stood there. I watched. I memorized. I let him talk. I let his voice get on tape. Because here's the thing, and this is the part he never understood. Every second of that was recorded, clean audio, clean video, exact timestamp. And that wasn't just for me. That was to put in front of a jury of regular people who maybe never met Rosa, but can feel in their gut what he did to her. It was getting worse by the week. Power works like rust. If you don't sand it off, it spreads. Dunham stopped pretending it was quiet side money and started making it theater. He'd roll up at lunch block traffic talk like he was doing a public service announcement. "Attention vendors, we are doing a compliance sweep for municipal revenue alignment. And everybody who lived there knew compliance sweep really meant open your wallet or I'm flipping your table and writing up whatever charge I feel like inventing." It hit a boiling point the day he went after Malik. I still get hot thinking about that. Malik's 16 all bones and energy, but he's protective. He's got that thing some kids have where they act like they're the only line between the world and their grandmother. Dunham had Rosa against the cart again, telling her she owed back safety fees, and tapping his baton against the metal like a metronome, real slow, letting her hear it, letting everybody hear it. And Malik stepped up and said, voice shaking but steady, "Leave her alone, she didn't do anything, man, leave her alone." That's all he said. He didn't swing, he didn't shove, he just spoke like a person. Dunham turned locked in on him like a shark catching new movement and said in that voice he uses when he wants a crowd to hear him, "What did you say to me, boy?" And I promise you every black person on that block felt that word hit the back of their neck at the exact same time. Malik did what kids do now. He pulled out his phone and held it up, not even in Dunham's face, just held it up and said, "Go ahead, say it again for the camera." You would have thought the kid pulled a gun. Dunham's whole body changed. These guys can threaten you all day long, but the second you hold up proof, that's when they panic. He snatched Malik's phone, smashed it face down on the concrete so hard the glass jumped, yanked that boy by the arm and started hauling him toward the cruiser like trash on pickup day. And he's yelling, "Interfering with an investigation, congratulations, you're going downtown," while Rosa is crying and saying, "Please, he's a child, please." And the whole street is standing there helpless, and I swear to you I felt something snap inside me. That was the moment I called my case agent, Agent Nora Park, and said, "We're done waiting. Next time he puts hands on anybody, I'm burning it. I'm done watching him terrorize a grandma in front of her grandson just to prove he can." She didn't argue. She just said, "Copy your green lit. If he escalates to violence again, you come up, and when you come up, you won't be alone." I didn't sleep much after that. I sat on the edge of that little studio apartment we were using as cover housing boots, still on badge and my hand sidearm, field stripped and reassembled 3 times the way you do when you're too wired to sit still. and I just replayed Rosa on her knees in that dirty water, Malik getting dragged the way everybody watched and pretended not to have seen anything, because fear will train you to act blind. 2 days later, late morning Harbor Point felt wrong from the minute I rolled my cart out. Fewer vendors, nervous eyes, people packing early like they were already bracing for a storm, and that's exactly what it was. 4 cruisers for 1 block. They boxed off both ends like a movie raid, lights off, engines running. Dunham got out with that extra swagger some men put on when they're scared and trying to cover it, and he brought bodies with him. His young guy Blake, who still had that hungry yes sir look, plus 2 other uniforms he'd used as muscle before. He didn't work his way down the street this time, he came straight to me. "Front and center, produce boy," he said, like roll call, like I worked for him. He grabbed my whole cash box and flipped it over, just dumped it, money everywhere, bills skittering across the sidewalk, coins bouncing under the cart. Then he pointed at the ground in front of all those witnesses and said, "Pick it up, all of it, on your knees like the dog you are." You ever feel a whole block change temperature, like anger becomes a physical thing in the air, like heat, you can almost taste it? That's what it felt like. People weren't just scared anymore, they were insulted, and insult is louder than fear. Dunham felt that shift too. You could see it. He got louder, more dramatic, like he had to double down to keep control. "Listen up," he yelled toward the food trucks and the tables and the storefronts. "From now on, Harbor Point pays triple. Anybody who doesn't pay gets a personal visit from my people. Anybody who tries to film us goes to jail for obstruction. You want to test that? Go ahead." And then he did the thing that ended his career. He pulled his baton, raised it high like he was about to crack me in the skull in front of everybody, like my blood was part of his speech. That was the line. That's the moment my job as fruit guy was over. Training took over. I reached up and caught his wrist mid-swing, stopped that baton inches from my head, locked his arm so tight his eyes went wide. He tried to yank back and couldn't, and for the first time since I met him, his face wasn't smug, it was confused. He was looking at me like, wait a second, this man is not who I thought he was. He hissed through his teeth real quiet so the crowd wouldn't hear, "Who the hell do you think you are?" And I stood up slow on purpose so Harbor Point could see every inch of this moment. And I said clear enough for everybody to hear it. "Sergeant Kyle Dunham, my name is Deputy United States Marshal Marcus Reed, badge number 2174, and you are under arrest." I wish I had a recording of the sound the block made when I said that, because it wasn't cheering yet, it was more like disbelief cracking open, like people realizing in real time that the fruit guy was not actually the fruit guy, and also realizing that this man who'd been terrorizing them for years was now the one with his arm pinned. From there it moved fast because we had planned it that way. You heard doors slamming and engines revving, and then the whole street filled with black SUVs and unmarked sedans like they rose up out of the asphalt, agents in vests coming in smooth and professional. Marshals, DOJ, outside internal affairs, all of it. Weapons down, voices calm, hands where we can see them do not reach. And suddenly these tough guys with the badges and the bravado looked real small. Blake, the young one, dropped his gun so fast it bounced, because now he understood this wasn't neighborhood theater, this was federal. We cuffed Dunham right there in front of my cart, his own baton now on the ground at his feet, and I read him his rights louder than I needed to, not to humiliate him, but because I wanted every person in earshot to know this was real. And Rosa with her bad knee and her hands that still shake when she gets mad, walked right up to him while he was cuffed and said in that same little steady voice she'd used to tell him, "No, the first day, you don't scare us anymore." And he couldn't even look at her. That's when some people cried. Not when we pulled up with the trucks, not when I said Marshal, but when that old woman said, "You don't scare us anymore," because that was the first time in years anybody had been able to say that out loud without whispering. Let me be real with you, because the internet loves to rewrite this kind of story and make it sound like one bad cop got caught, now justice is served, the end. And that is not how this works. We did not just grab him and call it a day. While we had Dunham on Harbor Point, other teams were already at Lieutenant Victor Hale's house with warrants pulling financials, computers, phones, the works. Because money that dirty does not stop at one sergeant. By sunset, we had multiple officers in custody, including 2 who thought they were untouchable because they never personally took cash, they just managed expectations. And we had copies of accounts showing right around $4 million skimmed out of working-class pockets over about 5 years. And let me tell you where that money came from. Asthma meds, rent school clothes, Rose's flower inventory, Malik's bus pass, Miguel's stand, repair, all of it stolen under color of law. 6 months later, I sat in federal court in an actual suit that felt weird after 3 years in a $6 orange t-shirt, and Dunham sat at the defense table trying his best concerned public servant face, and his lawyer tried words like entrapment and misunderstanding and overzealous federal action, and I sat there on that stand and said, "Sir, with respect, Sergeant Dunham was running this scheme 2 years before I ever rolled a fruit cart onto Harbor Point. All I did was press record, and then they played his own voice for the jury. Touch me and you bleed. This block belongs to me. Pay me or I'll shut you down."